What's that? They don't give a shit. Hey, Bob. Are you getting this? Did you bring someone else for you, or are you going to?
I have frames. But it doesn't hold on.
Well, then I should say something. I agree with Bob Orchard. Don't fall out of your chair. You know, they could have done a lot better with the seating in here. They did the same thing last time. They're purposely making it hard for people. You know, especially when Kevin got up there and said, well, I might limit it to 3 minutes if there's more. You can't address this thing in 3 to 5 minutes. You can't even address 2 pages of it. It's all about, in the last 10 years especially, the board has been very tough on letting people participate. See, we used to have workshops. Sure. And we'd sit down and talk about this thing would be put into separate issues. Okay, let's talk about the building department. What are their problems? And we're going to call the contractors and people. And we have an open meeting. When you're all done, you got something to work. We did that for 30 years. And not a chance here.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Got one person watching.
There's a lot of people out here.
Yeah, there's All right, folks, let's come to order. We are ready to begin the 2 p.m. agenda. Item number 1. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for wearing masks and observing procedures here. Let us all stay safe and have a good interaction this afternoon. So with this, the item is a discussion and direction regarding optional procedural actions for County Code Amendment number 2019-218 for code compliance procedures. Madam Planning Director.
Good afternoon. There are 5 items scheduled for the board to consider this afternoon. This first one is a discussion and direction item. And the results of that discussion and direction will affect what you do on items 2 through 5. So the big item today is this first one, agenda item L1, which is discussion and direction on code compliance procedures. This item is scheduled to facilitate continued board discussion and direction regarding the county code amendment that you considered and conducted a public hearing regarding on Tuesday, October 20th. At the conclusion of that public hearing, the board took preliminary action to approve the project. And I'll note that action you took on October 20th is not the final action. Today's action is the final action. Procedurally, we wouldn't normally be scheduling an item for continued board discussion and direction regarding a project like this following completion of a public hearing. However, there's been significant and continued public opposition to the board's preliminary action that you took 3 weeks ago. And that amount of public opposition is not typical. So procedurally, to complete the project today, or to complete the project as was originally proposed to you 3 weeks ago, would take adoption of 1 resolution and 4 ordinances. The ordinance adoption takes 2 steps at 2 separate hearings. And once the first step has been taken, we are obligated to schedule the second step for your action. So the board did adopt a resolution 3 weeks ago. However, that resolution is not effective until the effective date of the ordinances, and that's based on text that was written right into the resolution. On the 4 ordinances, again, you took the first step. You haven't taken the second step. That's what's on your agenda today as items 2 through 5. And based on the significant public opposition, I've identified 4 options for you to discuss and provide direction to us for the public to provide input on. Option 1 is stay the course. Option 2 is hit pause. Option 3 is drop the project. And option 4 is review chapter 8.56. There may be other options as well. Option 1, stay the course. This would result in your action in these next subsequent agenda items to adopt the 4 ordinances. There's a provision in there to establish a citizens oversight committee for implementation of that. The effects of that action would be the amendments would be in effect in 30 days, and a successful referendum action would delay the effective date and possibly result in nullification of the ordinances. Option 2 is hit pause. If the board is still interested in increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of code compliance procedures in Mariposa County, the action you take on the next 4 agenda items would be to deny the 4 ordinances. And you would direct staff to pursue some kind of a process for increasing public interaction and input. The details of that process, I think, should be directed by the new board that will be sitting come January. The effects of option 2 would take time to develop and implement that public process. It's likely that some form of the amendments could come back to the board in the future, and we would continue to rely on the current authority for code compliance work downstairs. Option 3 is to drop the project. The action you would take in the next 4 items would be to deny the 4 ordinances. The effect is that the project is dropped entirely, and again, staff would continue to rely on the current authority for code compliance work. Option 4 is to review chapter 8.56. There are existing county code provisions that establish a different compliance process for medical marijuana than exists currently in Title 17. Amendments are necessary to this chapter to comply with current state law, and the effects of this is if it's beneficial for compliance efforts involving commercial marijuana grows, we could come back at some point in the future with an amended chapter. So again, this agenda item L1 is only discussion and direction about those 4 options. Whatever the board determines is preferable in this agenda item L1, it will impact your action on the next 4 agenda items. Because this agenda item is about the options, I would suggest that public input focus on these options for the board's consideration. And that's it for my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer some.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Any board discussions? Supervisor Smallcombe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation and for all the work you've done on this. I know we had talked about the idea of focusing on marijuana. Can you clarify for me, I think in option 4, the way that you've laid it out, that is it would be a standalone chapter or title or chapter, meaning that we would include the new sort of code compliance process in that particular chapter and not bear a relationship to other chapters in county code, if I'm understanding it correctly. And then the last sentence on that paragraph, amendments would be necessary to comply with current state law. Can you amplify a little bit on that?
So I'm not willing to say that what would come out of option 4 is a procedure for marijuana that is exactly the same as what is in front of you today for Title I. We would have to go through a process and likely maybe take more input on what is appropriate for a process if there is a concern about marijuana. The way that 8.56 is currently written, it is structured on medical marijuana. A number of years ago, there was a state law that established allowances for medical marijuana. Mariposa County went through the process to implement those in the county. And since then, there have been changes in the state law for recreational marijuana that have changed the rules for marijuana as a whole. And those are the changes that we would have to make to that code. So if the board's interested, we'll start a process. We would come to the board for some direction. Definitely, I wouldn't sit here today and say that the process is going to look exactly like what was proposed for Title I.
But it would be standalone, and there would need to be some additional process language in the code.
The reason I raised that particular issue is there seems to be some concern about the impacts of commercial marijuana grows in the county and the safety impacts. And so this option may provide a way for us to address those.
Right.
That's the reason why it's on here.
Right.
Options.
But it would have to be standalone, essentially, for the time being.
It could be.
Meaning that, again, the way that I think about it is that we have general penalty 1.2 in the code that essentially says that any violation of county code, unless it's identified as an infraction, by definition is a misdemeanor and therefore a crime, or we follow a civil path, both of them take us to court. So we're left with, right now, our code, the department heads down there and our code enforcement folks are left with, please work with us. And if the landowner says, no, I won't work with you, then we have little recourse other than the court system, either on a criminal pathway or on a civil pathway. So this one would have to stand alone as a mid-ground.
I think we would have to define the details of that. It's not, I'm not prepared to talk about what we would come up with if the board is interested in pursuing amendments to 8.56. It's an option that's presented for the board today only because there seems to be some agreement that commercial marijuana grows are concerned.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Supervisor Administrator.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that the option is to pursue a plan with regard to that 8.56. And we can do that along with one of these other two options, or three, not three, but the other two. And I kind of wanted to touch on what Supervisor Smalkin said, which is there's been a lot of talk about procedures in place and things that are already working. And I just want maybe to clarify that right now, if we have a situation that needs attention or correction, the only way to remedy that is to go to court. Is that correct? not talking about the nuisances as much as code violations.
That's the ultimate remedy if we are not able to obtain compliance working cooperatively with the property owner. We write letters and file notices of violation and establish corrections. But ultimately, if we're not successful, then we have to refer the item to county council. Remedy if he's not successful working cooperatively with the property owners to take that action to Superior Court.
Okay, just
We
wanted to make-
do have an ability to file a notice of noncompliance at the recorder's office to try to help, or to provide notice to a potential future property owner and purchaser about a violation of the property. That's an existing tool that we have today.
Okay. Which is the genesis of this whole project, to find a way to have an intermediary compliance, compelling one to comply without having to go over to the courthouse. If I said that correctly.
Correct, our current procedures are not effective 45% of the time.
Okay. And thank you for bringing this, this item, which gives this board some options. And as you stated, a lot of interest in this. Folks are back again to hear what we have to say. And glad everybody's here. It makes a statement that everybody has spent the last 3 weeks commenting and telling us what they think through various channels. I guess my take on this particular item would be to, I would choose option 2 and 4 at this point, pending public input. That's kind of where I came down reading this item, so I'll throw that out there and let the rest of you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Long.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah, talk a little bit more about option 2, getting paused. Basically, we will be handing this to the next board if we went ahead and pursue amended project, because time is short for the current board. There are 5 more meetings, I don't know, but there wouldn't be enough time to have board public input on the item, have some public workshops. There wouldn't be time before the end of this board's term. So basically, we're handing it to the next board to take a look at if we go with option 2. If we add an option 4 on that, but that could be going on concurrently, or right now, starting now, if the board moves with option 4.
I think if the board moves with option 2 and 4, then they both should be folded together for a public process to provide input on what is the, I guess I should back up a little bit. This option 2 is put on here based on public input that was made at the public hearing on October 20th. There were a number of people who said, hey, board, slow down. This is a significant project. We haven't had enough time to look at it. There are problems with the amendments, or the amendments aren't correct for Mariposa County for a variety of reasons. And those people asked for an opportunity to work with the county to suggest an amended text and an amended procedure. So that's why option 2 is on there. There's no way that this could be done before the end of this calendar year. So that's why I had in option 2, if the board takes that action, we wouldn't do anything until after the first of the year. We come back to the new board for some kind of direction from the new board about their expectations for the public process and the process to acquire additional public input on those amendments.
Thank you, Sarah. and I do support option 2 and 4. Thank you for all your hard work. And I also want to, thank you to your staff, thank you to our code compliance technicians. Sometimes we make mistakes, but to vilify people and call them names and threaten them is not appreciated, nor is it constructive. That's why we have open meetings in the way that we do, so that we can discuss things. I know that I've heard your voices, and I've changed direction. So, I'm glad that I get to hear your voices, because on a lot of issues, I hear critics out there. I went to my kitchen cabinet, had a meeting with them, had some very up and down arguments over the issues, but I came to the conclusion that we need more public input. We need to slow down and take some time and really look at this thoroughly. So, again, thank you to staff.
Oh, by the way, please refrain from the interruptions, please.
But vilifying the planning director and the building director, the code compliance technicians does no good, or supervisors for that matter. Constructive criticism is certainly expected and welcomed, and I'm willing to talk to anybody anytime about any of these issues. So that's what I got to say about it. Thank you.
Supervisor Jones?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I mean, this is what democracy is like. This is what this country's like, is to be able to come and voice your opinions. And lots of times, people sit home and complain or get on Facebook. And believe me, Facebook is a great tool, but it's also one of the biggest detriments to this society, in my opinion. I agree with Supervisor Long and Minitry. I've thought about this a lot, read it, and I think a jillion emails and a jillion phone calls. Last night I was up until 10:30 listening to people on the phone and hearing their side of it. And so I guess the thing that's been frustrating for me, I think frustrating for the county staff, and I think in the long run, frustrating for some of you people out there, is the length of time it takes with our current process to go through enforcement of a code. For example, I am doing a project right now, and I've got a neighbor beside me that has 1 permitted structure, 6 non-permitted structures, and he says, why did you go and get your encroachment fee, and why did you go and get your remodeling fee? I didn't do any of those. So the people that are out there doing it the right way are sometimes feel like they're getting penalized. But I agree that I think options 2 and 4, because commercial growing, in my opinion, something needs to happen to that immediately or as soon as possible. But I would like to commend the county staff, and I don't think and I'm going to say this plain and simple, they have not deserved some of the remarks that have been made. They are doing the best job they can. They work at it hard. And I know each of them. I know a lot of you folks out there. Sometimes when the temperature gets built up a little too high, a lot of stuff comes out that should not. So when people refer to them in many different ways that are inappropriate, I really take offense to that. They are great people. But again, I will go back and and say, I think a pause to this is appropriate, and run options 4 concurrent with option 2 and revisit it, I think would be the appropriate thing to do, and give everybody an opportunity to voice their opinions, but in the same respect, realize that if we have a code on the books, that code needs to be enforced or it needs to come off the books. And I think everybody in this room should agree to that. That if it's on the books and we're not going to enforce it, that's not fair to anybody. I mean, I feel like it's not fair to me right now to go out and get all my permits and everything and do it the right way when my neighbor is just laughing at me. So I would be in favor of options 2 and 4, and 2, I won't be in a decision-making process then. I'm going to miss it because I've enjoyed this, and I've worked with code compliance for ever since I came into office 8 years ago, and that's our 3rd code compliance person, because the other 2 got to the point where they just simply gave up because they had no teeth in what they were doing. And I don't want to lose this one because she's a great code compliance person. So we need to come up with something, and I hope everybody can work together and come up with a solution to this problem. And I'll leave it there right now.
All right, thank you. Good. After the October 20 meeting, I called together County Council, Clerk, CAO, Planning Director. It was clear that we lost control of the narrative, the initial desire to implement code compliance actions between saying shame on you and going to court for receivership. You know, there's a whole lot of room in between. But it was also clear that a lot of the language in the proposed codes were of great concern, and that, you know, as we go into the second reading, you don't have the option to modify the ordinance. You either approve or you reject in the second reading. It cannot be passed in any form different from its original form. So I think you've heard here in this item, and I really appreciate the planning director putting together these options. And I think you've heard clearly that the board desires to step back, review the work. They are committed to the 3 that will be going forward next year, committed that there needs to be some compliance actions in between the court and shaking our finger to use the minimum necessary to bring everything from zoning to safety issues more into line. So through this action and our ability to have this discussion, I think it's gotten pretty clear that the board intends to, I very much support option 2, to pause this, to deny the amendments, and pursue a much more public process and public communication interaction, so that the result is something that folks can get behind. As Sarah said, none of us were happy when there's such an outcry about a proposed action. I mean, we have to find that ground where folks can, and I can agree. And I take a lot of responsibility on the county side, because, you know, we should have been out having that communication 3 months in advance of trying to bring these things in the board. And they're very complex, as you well know. They're extremely complex, and so I think that's what the board is trying to commit to doing here. So this actual item that we're on right now is a discussion and direction item. And if I summarize, a pretty strong majority of the board wants to give direction to move, to hit that pause, and we will go through these actions here. Now, and that we'll back that up and set that into motion. We still do need to go through each of those actions independently, but we wanted you all to see this intention before we start the public comment process, so that if you care to give the public comments on what you've seen from the board's actions, then you may choose to do that. So at this point, on this discussion and direction item, I'm going to open for public comment, and I will, excuse me?
It is related to this subject.
So this
only.
item, yeah.
This one only.
So I'm going to open public comment on this item. I'll remind everyone, it is imperative that the podium remain a safe place, no matter what side of any issue you are speaking on. We want to hear everyone's side. So I would ask that you not make outcries or clapping or so on, so that folks can all feel comfortable to come up and give their comment. I think for this item, if it looks like we have a lot of input, we're going to at the first go round to 3 minutes of public comment based on what you've seen from this discussion. And after folks are done with that, we'll see how many want to have spoken. If you haven't been able to get your comments across in 3 minutes, 3 minutes is longer than you think, but I will consider reopening, and we'll see how we go. So at this point, I will open public comment specifically directed to this, and it's easy to, folks, when we have a lot of folks interested, usually you just line up a little bit and when you come up, man, you had the front seat, you should get up there, you were. So if just push the button, please, that says speak, and just leave it on. Okay. Excuse me? I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. It's very helpful. The meetings are recorded. It's very helpful, though not required. If you could please give your name, and then we have the little timer deal here. If you haven't seen it before, turn it on, Marshall. It is green for 2.5 minutes, and when you have 30 seconds left, it will be yellow, and when it's red, the mic shuts off.
My name is Connie Morris.
Thank you.
And the comment that I had to make was based on, and I believe it concerns option 2. I believe what she said was that the only option that you have if people aren't compliant on their own is the court. Now, I was brought up to think that everybody has that right to take their concern to court. And that's what I believe, so I just wanted you to know that.
All right.
That's what I had to say.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, excuse me.
Oh, are those your glasses? Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Wayne Mullen. I did a little research. And on February 20th in 2019, the federal Supreme Court ruled unanimously in the Timms versus Indiana case that state and local governments are bound by the 8th Amendment ban on excessive fines, setting a historic precedent against policing for profit. Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote an opinion, and she said, I quote, In short, the historical and logical case for concluding that the 14th Amendment incorporates excessive fine clause is overwhelming. Ginsburg wrote, "Protection against excessive punitive economic sanctions secured by the clause is, to repeat, both fundamental to our scheme of ordered liberty and deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition." And so what I would like to say to the Board of Supervisors is your proposed resolution in violation of federal law? That's all I have to say.
And this is not an interaction time, this is your time, but I say these are the proposed resolutions today, so you know.
I want to be on record for what you're going to produce.
Thank you. Welcome. You just turned yourself off.
All right. I'm Steph Siebert. I own Siebert Supply. I deal with thousands and thousands of people in this county over the years that have had problems in their house where they needed code problems. And I'd like to say that the building department and the planning department have been very generous in helping these people along the way. And when I've advised them to follow the code, in almost all cases, they've done that. And this particular fiasco that you came up with and did not spend the right amount of time on is an embarrassment to these people who work hard, and some of them on limited incomes. I have time and time again loaned money for people to fix things that I know they can't. And our county needs to stand behind those people and not fight them. But I do think that Sarah came up with a great idea for option 2. And I applaud her for that. And I know that people like Mike Henslow need this to continue successfully. And so I hope you follow through on that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to me here. And I just want to comment and say that I have utmost respect for the Board of Supervisors. I'm glad that you've made these decisions. It seems to be a very controversial subject, and allowing more time is only logical and meaningful here. I like the idea of some of the things that I had seen in these enforcement code changes. One of them was to allow the people to have additional time to take care of some of these things. I think I'm going through all my notes here that I scribbled up here, and I should have been better prepared. I'm sorry. It was under allowing postponement of imposition of fines and what have you. So I hope that that continues to allow the people that are under duress to resolve some of these code violations. As we move forward, I like the idea of perhaps establishing an advisory committee to allow the public to be part of that committee in different aspects of concerns for establishing these codes or enforcement of these codes. I fully agree with Merlin Jones that you can't have codes without enforcement and teeth to take care of these things. It has to be a community effort on doing all this. I think allowing some additional time would be fantastic. I'm sorry to see a lot of you go, but this will be passed on to others, and I hope to be able to stand up here and be able to work with those folks also, and give them some of my opinions. I guess one of those areas place I think that should be added to the code would be a section on arbitration. You have a couple of them in there right now. I think arbitration might be added to a section 1.40.190. That would just be a suggestion also to at least move forward on some of this information. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Dave.
My name is Shannon Poe. I've been here for about 14 years. Came up here for gold mining. Hello, Rosemary.
Hello, Shannon.
We know each other.
We do.
You know, I strongly considered running for supervisor this last go-round, but I didn't actually know if I was going to stay in California because of the craziness coming out of Sacramento. I kind of wish I had now. As a part of considering running for supervisor, I researched very specifically what the roles are each one of you has to play and what their function is. And primary is to listen to your constituents and represent them. I think that we would all agree on that. So I would like everybody to just look around. I mean, there's people in here, I know Merlin was talking about social media and how it can be a good or bad thing. I've fought and battled with people on the opposite side of the political spectrum than myself on Facebook, yet here, I'm out there greeting them, and we're high-fiving, and we're fist-bumping, and doing all that kind of things. In all of the years that I've been involved in politics, I've never seen unity from the broad scale of the spectrum like I see here today. That should really send a message to you guys. I don't know of anybody that doesn't oppose this, other than a few supervisors up here. So, I don't recommend option 2 or 4, I recommend option 3. So as a gold miner, if my excavator breaks down or my backhoe or my dump truck, I find out what the problem is and I fix it. That's what we need to do with the current code that we have here. Fix it. That's what we pay you guys for. Come up with a solution and fix it. Don't recreate it. Don't bring in a firm that is so wrapped up in controversy and, you know, lawsuits and litigation that you're going to drag the county through the mud. Don't do that. This creates and authorizes code enforcement officers to have really unbelievable powers. And as somebody, Merlin knows this personally, if he remembers it, I went through a code compliance issue when we got our property years and years ago. I was told I could build this thing. It was just a couple of cargo containers. I put a roof over it, and come to find out I needed a permit. County came in, said you need to do this. I got the permit. I did all the things that they said, and I was unaware that I didn't even need to do that. From what I'm hearing from you, Merlin, I could have just give you guys the middle finger and went about my business. Well, that's not the type of person that I am, and I frankly, I'm a little shocked that you would say that. Is that, I know you're not going to answer the questions, but if that's the case where you've got code compliance and people aren't following it, then fix it. Your time's up. Thank you. I just want, I don't care, I'm going to say this one last thing, whether or not you guys allow me to or not. What?
I'm sorry, you will, if when we get done, you see a lot of people want their 3 minutes.
Thank you.
We'll allow it again. Thank you. Can you turn the, push the little button at the base there that says speak. Thank you.
My name is Martin Hall, Sr. I'm a longtime resident of Mariposa. Started out here in the 5th grade, went through middle school and grammar school and part of high school, and then we ended up moving away when my dad got sick. So that being said, and also I need to thank you guys, by the way. My wife passed away about 1.5 years ago, and you all signed a deal letting me know that she would be missed, and I appreciate that. I know some of you, I know Marshall, I knew his folks, I went to school with his brother. I am a Vietnam veteran. And since my wife was passed, she took half of our income, obviously, when she left. I just wanted it to be, let people know that I'm the type of person that's going to be affected adversely by this. And I understand that, you know, you need a code deal that has teeth. And a suggestion would have been is don't charge people from the day that you start the deal. Wait for 60, 30 days or whatever, and then start charging. And if it looks like that they're making an honest effort, then start it all over again. You know, for a little guy like me or whatever. Because there's one question you have to ask yourself. Are you here to make Mariposa nice and beautiful again? Or are you trying to take people's places? And that's what scares people. And in this political climate that we have today, especially in California, because they don't ask, they just do. They don't take the people's deal, and that's the way our country was initially started, was the Boston Tea Party. Taxation without representation. And when you start telling people this is what they're going to do, then they start getting upset. And in my opinion, you know, like I said, I'm just an average Joe, but that's the kind of people that you're going to be dealing with. And I come from 3 of the largest families in Mariposa. We've discussed it in different places around, you know, and it does need teeth. I agree. And you guys are probably catching it from both sides. And I give you that. But that's the way you make the big bucks. I've met her before. I should know you, but I don't. You're my supervisor. I'm in District 4. And like I said, I knew Marshall. And probably half of you knew my mother-in-law. Sorry, my mother-in-law was honored in the last newspaper article on
Thank you.
99 years old. Thank you. All right.
That's it. Push the speak button, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. No, you did fine.
So I'm Casey. You guys probably hear more from me than you wish you did. But my suggestion would also be to go with 3 and pick it up from starting at 0 with the new board. And I say that given that this year there has been a substantial loss of trust. Like, there's been, politically speaking, the temperature's really high. We have a pandemic going on. People are going through a lot of stress, a lot of changes. There was a referendum on some of the actions you guys took. People are really tense. My suggestion would be go with 3, start over, just start all over. And I know you guys have a thankless job, and that would be a pain in the butt to do. Okay, like really, I get that. That's what I would do. If you guys want to move along with any of the faith of the people behind you, whether you're still here or whether you're average citizen, that's what there is to do. Your constituents and the people in this town are primarily older, disabled, or low income. There's not a whole lot of people like me who are young, able-bodied, and I run my own business. And if you guys came to me with a violation ordinance, I'm not a homeowner, I have 0 skin in the game. But if you guys came to me with some sort of violation, there's no way I'd be able to fix it even in 6 months, simply because of what's going on in the world right now. And I run my own business. Like, financially, I'm usually A-okay. But there's no way, and you guys would send me off to Silver and Wright, who have an awful reputation. Like, that's just not, that's not taking care of the people. So, now whether or not that's the accurate accurate process, that's what everybody else sees, right? So what you guys need to do, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm not on the board, so I get to hear what everybody says that they don't say to you, which is that they don't believe you. No matter what you say up there, they don't believe you. We need to scrap it and start over. And I hate to tell you that, but that's kind of where we're at. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
My name's Victoria Trujillo. I'm from Cathy's Valley. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your hard work. I know even though many in the private sector are frustrated and sometimes forget to speak kindly, you are all working hard for what you think is best for Mariposa County. I felt at times more so in the past few years that your vision for the county was not shared by many in the community and many of us that you represent. And that's partly our fault because we're not always here, but a lot of us work and can't get here. And so the department heads get to spend a lot more time with you and build a relationship with you. I have this much written about experiences. I would say just about this that when I hired an engineer for one project that the building department thought I didn't have a permit for, and then they found a permit, but I still was required to hire an engineer. It was a year and a half before the first guy did anything, actually did nothing. So then we got another one in Merced, and that was another year, we're talking 2.5 years. And each time that we got a letter from building or wherever it comes from, the people that we called were colder and colder. And it's not because we changed, but as time goes by, they just see it as excuses. Anyway, I'm just going to talk about one project. We were contacted by an old acquaintance who asked if we'd like to buy her senior parents' mobile home. Unbeknownst to us, they had received a threatening letter from the local court enforcement officer because of unpermitted work. We're in our 60s, we have a little more energy than them. They were in their 80s. They never told us about the letter. They were scared. I couldn't figure out why. This elderly woman was crying all the time. Her home was cluttered and in need of TLC, but her yard was full of love and roses and benches and little marked graves of her animals. And they needed extra time to move out, so we didn't want to push them. And before we even worked on the place, we got our threatening letter. And it was pretty scary to us. We're like, oh no, what now? And it took us over 4 months just to get an engineer to complete the reinforcement deck plans. 4 months, and he was rushing to do us a favor. And then he told us the deck was really solid, but he had to do the work anyway because it was required. Over 6 months, we worked and worked there, tearing down carports and little shop buildings and whatever. It was awful. And we had been told when we first got the letter we would have time and just contact her in a couple of months. A couple weeks later, she showed up, the enforcement officer, and she was not invited on the property. And I said, I feel more comfortable if you'd come when my husband was here. I was very nice to her. And she talked about, you know, things we were doing. She assumed that we were building things because she saw the things we were taking down. And she accused us of knowing things that we didn't know. And when she left, I had a good cry. And she took pictures, and she was not invited on property. Is that my turn?
Thank you. It is not. Push the button. Thank you. When the bell goes off here, it automatically shuts it, so.
You just took up 3 seconds.
We'll start you.
Well, you got a reprieve. I'm skipping most of my stuff. And I want to commend you, which is rare, of your decision of what you're talking about, your decision today of these options. So I'm just going to go back and cover a couple of things I covered before as you head down this road. And so, a couple of things. When you talk about enforcement and filing a notice of violation, that does not take a court. I've got one on my property that's been there for years. It was a minor thing back in the day of gift deeds. Sell property, it'll get fixed. Very simple thing, but it's there. And it doesn't hurt anybody. Your enforcement procedure is a big issue. And what you're doing with this, I'm going to suggest again, you don't hold this kind of a hearing. You hold a public meeting, normally a workshop,
where we have a two-way discussion. I hear a lot of things that you're saying before you open this hearing up, and I could have resolved it or give you suggestions how to resolve it right then if there was a two-way discussion. So very important when I see these people with signs out here. And Merlin, you hit it right on the head when you said out there's ordinances that need to be removed because there's a violation and there's no purpose for it. So you were really right on the money. And so I think that's going to be pretty much my presentation. Workshops. I spent 30 years in workshops and writing ordinance with the Board of Supervisors and staff from 1980 to 2010. And it works really well, especially when you're putting together an ordinance. And usually when you walk out of there, you got something that will be passed. And my last suggestion is, don't put this thing in a bulky 100-page deal. Building department, meeting. Invite the builders, the people that run into the permit stuff, the no permit, and sit down with Mike and talk about, you can use the content of this, there's some validity in it, and fix those things directly associated with the building and the health department, and then go to the planning department and do them individually and invite those people that are associated, people that put septics in and wells and stuff for that, and the people that work with Sarah in the planning department. And take those issues one at a time. This is crazy to put this in and give us 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Kevin, that is just a misuse of the public. I know, I'm not blaming you, but it's not a good way. And I can quit before my time's up. So when you put this together, what you're doing, I'm suggesting that you do it right and start with the problem. Where is the problem? He hit it right on the head with one of them. And the other one was recommended or stated that there wasn't even a violation.
I knew you couldn't stop before your time. You can't help it. Thank you, welcome.
Hi, my name is Anthony Trujillo. I'm from Cathy's Valley. I'm the pastor at the church down there. And I have to say that if anybody really had dealt with these laws as much as some of us have, you would say giving teeth to the law is like giving more teeth to a great white shark. I mean, it is unbelievable the things that the code contains. And people would be so shocked if they saw some of the ridiculous things. And even a minor thing in our church, like there's an exception in the code for a path of travel. You don't need it if you have a staging area. And we asked for that. It's an exemption, it's allowed. And the county said no. And that's fine, that's their prerogative, but that costs $10,000. And I think sometimes when people get frustrated in our county and our community is that we feel and kind of had hoped that the supervisors and that our county government would serve as protection against the state. And we feel like oftentimes there's so much desire to get in line with California that you're actually working with the state. And I always when I elected my supervisor, who I, as a good friend, Marshall here, even though we disagreed on some of these things, I really had hoped that it would be protection. And what I keep finding is, and I don't know if you know this, but you read something like to the code. I just read the code, I read the explanation, and it says, at the discretion of the code enforcer. That lady could be Jesus Christ, but the next person, you cannot guarantee whether they're going to be kind or unkind, and that is such an unfettered power. People would be amazed. And really honestly, when I look at this, another problem I have with codes, building codes, is as a Christian, I feel that they are an undue tax on the poor. And the Bible is very clear about this. It says that the poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. And for those of us that did live in poverty or below the poverty line or made less than $30,000 for most of our lives, these codes, they're insurmountable. You can't. And I would say something that really has bothered me in this process, and I'll just finish with this, is that I would have expected in my heavenly, if it was heaven for me, if we're talking about rolling back the code and people, code enforcement is not what we should be talking about, in my opinion. I think we should be talking about rolling back codes, fixing codes. Right now, if you have a 10 by 20 area in your yard that has things that can't start up right now, that is considered, you're considered an auto dismantler or a junkyard. That's you can't fit 3 cars in that space. And I think that what happens so often is we're siding with California, and I really hope to be defended. And that's kind of my hope. I appreciate you guys and what you do, but a lot of us were hoping we would see kind of the defense as opposed to what seems to us to be the attack.
Thank you. Yes, please push the button. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Stanley Bismeyer, and everything that was said before me is very pertinent and close to what I feel. But I want to bring up something else that relates to option 3. The fact that you've talked about predisposing yourselves to options 2 and 4. I feel like I'm wasting my time talking to this bureaucracy. I wish that the words we say to you, the public service that we rely on you so much. We rely on you more than we rely on our own parents, family, and friends, because you control so much. So let me put in my 2 cents worth. You will not find a peace officer in this state, one that has common sense, that will enforce even your nuisance codes. They won't do it because they're written too broad, and they certainly won't enact the fines that you enact. Think of it, a CHP pulls you over because you just ran over a guy. You're going to go to jail for 8 years, but you'll keep your house. The sheriff picks you up for killing a little baby. You're going to go to prison for many years, but you won't lose your house. Here, we have a junkyard, and we could lose our home. And that's why you have so much community outrage. You've linked nuisance laws in with building codes. Nuisances have nothing to do with safety. They have nothing to do with it. They have to do with a person's perception. So your perception of my chicken coop is now a junk pile, and you're going to act on that perception in an immoral and unprovoked way to cause me to lose my house. You've already seen enough testimony. People in this county aren't wealthy. The wealthy aren't standing here arguing with you. Poor people are. Even middle class people are. Because there go I, but for the grace of God. There goes my home, but for the grace of God. I have worked in some pretty hairy places. I worked in the hardest institution in the state. I walked into that institution with people stabbing a guy in the neck. It was common. Violence was common. So I learned how to control people obeying the rules and the laws within that violence context. And not for a week, but for years. Some of these guys are going to be locked up. They're going to be like my children for 5 years. And one of the sayings we had, you can make any rule you want for there, but how are you going to enforce it? You can say no stabbing, but how are you going to enforce it? No thought was given to the enforcement. And then to lump enforcement in with nuisances is not the same thing as somebody building a house without insulation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stanley.
My name is Lisa Gill, and I'm here with my husband Todd, and several of you know me. But today I'm going to talk as Lisa Gadsby, the mother of Marine Corps Sergeant Kirk Gadsby. In 2009, my son, an active duty Marine, got an inheritance, and his number one thing was to buy a home that he knew I would be safe in and I would never have to move from. On December 14th of 2015, he was killed. But I knew that he died knowing that I would be safe, and he took care of me. And now, after 12 years of living in the same place next to the same neighbors, they figured out how to use the planning department to harass us endlessly and relentlessly. They've called animal control on us. None of them have been hounded. Every time they've come out, they said, you're not doing anything wrong, you just got an angry neighbor. And with animal control, they have said that they are not allowed to use their department as a form of harassment and to let them know if it continues. That's not the case with the planning department. I'll let my husband finish.
Well, we just think that, if some of these codes changes go through, that there should be something in there about constant calls from one person, some type of harassment claim or something that can be put in there, because, you keep track of it, it's going to be obvious. And that's kind of what adding teeth to these codes will do, is allow people like that to have more power and abuse it. And that's really what we're concerned about the most.
I've been stopped from getting riding lessons because one neighbor complained that we were a nuisance. I don't do anything. You know, I don't do anything. I am the most boring human being on the planet. I don't stay up late. I don't play loud music. I do have a loud voice, but I don't do anything. We've been told that our horses are loud and annoying. The people who lived there before that were their neighbors had donkeys. I was told that I can no longer give riding lessons because one person has complained about me. I've lost income. I have prided myself on helping kids in the rodeo queen contest and teaching young children responsibility and the pride of earning a championship, and I can no longer do that here. That's it. And there's other people in this community that are giving lessons, and the planning department told me that it didn't matter. It's against code, but it doesn't matter that they're not on commercial property because no one's complaining. That's the reasoning.
Oh, just turned it off.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jeremiah Trigland. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I chose to move here in Mariposa County 8 years ago. My wife's family settled in Captain's Valley with the Cathys, the Rowlands, and I made the decision to come here to bring my family's roots back. And part of the decision was to get away from these kind of code enforcement things that happen in other places that I've lived, and to have a little bit more freedom on the land that I chose to invest in. And had this process been even going on at that time, I would not have brought my family here. And I think we all know this county needs families, it needs young people. There's no lifeblood here with this kind of thing, And I can tell you right off, I know a lot of other people that will decide to leave or not come here due to this kind of code enforcement and the loss of liberty and the trying to circumvent the court system. It's very upsetting. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Freeman. I used to be a systems analyst at NASA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field. Our job was to help the scientists write and run their code on the supercomputers. We also wrote code and configured our systems to help our users. Our job was to help them succeed. Under no conditions would we ever have taken a dictatorial, tyrannical approach. We were successful and they were successful because we listened and worked together to achieve common goals. To facilitate communication, we use something called agile programming techniques, and let me explain. First, we identified the stakeholders for each project. That is, we worked to identify all who would be using our systems and all who would be affected by changes. Second, we would identify their needs. Our users were wildly divergent. Chemists need completely different configurations and software than, say, a visualization specialist. Third, we would contact everyone, the users, the managers, the hardware experts, and the software experts. Then we listened and we listened. We listened to everyone and everything. Next, we would come up with solutions and we would present them to everyone. Then we would collect feedback. Often, we would hear about things we had never considered. We would redesign and we would present again. over and over until we found acceptable solutions. We would then prototype and then have our super users test it. When we found problems, we would redesign and we would fix again. We would continue the process always in a spirit of collaboration to achieve the best results possible. 90% of NASA's supercomputing was done at our site by choice of the users because our processors worked. Mariposa needs to take a hard look at how and why their processes have created such problems and have lost our trust. Please, we would be happy to consult with you to help develop a better process that results in a collaborative governance that produces legal and safe code. I ask you for option 3 for now. In the future, we ask that you utilize the basic concepts of cooperative code development to achieve optimal results, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise. I understand that you're now looking at options 2 and 4, so thank you for that. And if you're going to look at 2 and 4, why not just look at 3? Just drop the project. If the new board chooses to take this path, let them start with a clean slate. Don't leave them a mess, because in essence, that's what you're handing them. Here, we made this mess, we put it on hold, you guys do what you want to with it. Why not just take it off, take the project, drop it completely, and leave a clean slate? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You're good.
Yeah. My name is James Burgess. I'm a rancher, and Jerry Cox was my neighbor. And I watched him go through this thing. You know Jerry Cox. You know the whole story. They took away his land. They took away everything he had and sold his property. And you guys have got the same law firm working for you now that worked on that. Is that correct? Is that correct? Is that correct? Is Silver and Wright, the law firm was working for you guys? Yeah. I'm asking.
Silver and Wright is working.
Okay. Well, the same guys that helped you with this other matter. I'm not a Jerry Cox fan. I never had been. But you guys treat him like he wasn't an American citizen. And what you guys should do, ever who signed and put this on the board, ought to resign. Because if you don't, we're going to impeach you. We're going to make a recall on you, and you're gone. Because you don't have enough common sense. Is my time up? No. You've had enough of me.
No, you got plenty of time.
Yeah. Anyway, if you signed up on the Jerry Cox thing, and you signed up for this, you need to get the hell out of the county. Because that's not Mariposa. It's not in the United States. Okay? I'm done.
Hang on. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yeah, my name is James Smith, and we've lived in this county since 1993. I have 4 questions, and after I address them, I'll contact Marshall Long, so you guys don't have to address it until then. The first one is, are agents able to enter our property without our permission? And the second one is there a grace period? If you guys come out and say, you're looking over my fence with those powered binoculars, and you say, well, this is wrong, okay? Are you going to just hit me with a large fine that I can't afford to pay? Or are you going to give me time to fix it? That's sort of the same thing. Okay, and basically the last thing is, when you guys put people in power, sometimes these people seek Powell.
You're on. Oh, cool. My name is Nick Lambert. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep it short and sweet so I can go back to my nap in the corner over there. My suggestion actually is not any of those four. I would actually suggest option 3.2. The reason I say 3.2 is I would suggest taking the 0.2% from option 1 of creating an oversight committee, adding that to option 3 after you drop the project, make that your first step. That way something this terribly written does not make it in front of you again. That's all I got.
Hi, Barbara Cohn. Nowhere in the, oh, and thank you for the 2 and 4 options that you mentioned. I stand for option 3. Nowhere in the documents are fines explained. It does not say where the fines will go. It does not define hardship. It talks about where the fees will go, but not the fines. And so you have to take a look at the 8th Amendment of the Constitution, where it says excessive bail shall not fines be imposed, nor, gosh, I can't read my own handwriting, unusual punishment be inflicted. On February 2019, there was a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court. And in that, the Supreme Court forcefully told the state and local governments that the excessive fines clause applies to fines, fees, and forfeitures. It was unanimous, 9-0 of our Supreme Court. This was last year. In the analysis of that case, which was Timms versus Indiana, the primary concerns were stated. Number 1, the imposition of excessive fines are used by local governments to punish dissent, people they don't like and behaviors they don't like. And that is one of the main concerns of the Supreme Court. The second one was that local governments are using fines, fees, and forfeitures to revenue. Therefore, the Supreme Court believes that they must enforce the 8th Amendment prohibition against excessive fines, and they're very hot on this topic right now. So let's look at the situation here. We have a thing where it's fines of $100 per day on day 31. Some are 200, some are 300, some are 500 a day. Doubling on day 31, that is excessive fines. Plus a 10% fee, which will exceed the actual cost of administering excessive fines and fees, violation of the 8th Amendment. So lack of any attention to where the fines will go, how they are used, creates a significant red flag here in Mariposa. This would be illegal. The addition of liens on property taxes that will result in foreclosure, that violates the cruel and unusual punishment clause of the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the very foundation of our democracy. I suggest the Board of Supervisors, County Council, Planning, and the Code Enforcement take a good hard look at the Supreme Court ruling, as hard a look as our attorneys are going to take regarding any affirmative vote if you were to move forward today. Thank goodness you're considering not. The Supreme Court authority is legally binding on Mariposa County, and it will be brought to bear upon this body to preserve and protect our constitutional guarantees. God bless democracy.
I'm Janetta Phillips. They may not applaud me. I just wanted to commend you, all 5 of you, for being willing to take another look at this mess. And I think 2 and 4 are good options because it says pursue amended projects. I mean, you're going to look into all these regulations and everything, but I think you guys are good. I think that's a very good option, and I think marijuana is one of the biggest things that's affecting our community right now, with the larger growths and things. And I just like to say that if without enforcement and laws and rules and regulations in our country, our county, and our state, it's chaos and will be chaos. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Jim.
I think that there's some very elderly homes out there. Apparently there's, maybe there's a lot of them in this county, and I'm afraid to work on my own house because of the way the rules are now. So I'd like women to vote for free, and his suggestion that this never come to the board again. Thank you.
You're on. Oh, you're on. There you go.
It's red. My name's Elijah Butler. My family's lived here for a very long time. My son is 6th generation, and I'm really proud to be a part of this town. When I was in the military, I'd tell stories of just how great of a community we have and how we look out for one another. And this really feels like we're not looking out for one another here. And I just want to back up everything everybody else has come up here and said. And if we were to go forward in this path, it really feels like it would be a push to gentrification. Only the rich could afford these types of things, and it doesn't seem right. I would go for 3, and as far as 4 goes with the medical marijuana, if that's really kind of where you guys are trying to focus so that you can have enforcement there. I understand that. I don't think any of the people who are growing under ordinance already in compliance want commercial growers here either. So definitely would be for that. But if you're going to make it a fine situation, I mean, those commercial growers would just be a pay-to-play kind of situation. So I don't have a great suggestion on there except for the court system, like local guaranteed. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Elijah.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Armstrong, and I'd like to thank you all for this process. It's been a real learning experience for me. I've been here 35 years, and I love this county, and I love the people in this county. I would not have gotten involved as I have in COVID, in the time of political unrest that we have, if I didn't believe that what we're doing is right. Opposing this code is right. Voting it down is right. Going back and getting every person that has been here today, their voice is essential to this government, this community. So please, I'm going to thank you. Thank you for honoring that. You've awakened a level of public activism that I've never seen in this county. You have united everybody in this room. That is unbelievable. Across race, across party lines. Yes. And that is an achievement that is incredible and hopeful. Roll with that. Work with us. And don't disenfranchise the most vulnerable in this community so that we can remain here, prosper, and thrive, and contribute to local government. Thank you.
Have everyone who wanted to speak once had a chance? Thank you. Then I will, since it's only a handful, allow another 2-3 minutes.
It's their fault. They told me to come back up.
That's quite all right, Victoria.
So I was telling you about my story and the people who lost it. These kind of things are what make people like that lose their homes. You know, they were kind of innocent. I felt really bad when I found out after why they left. Not that they didn't tell us about it, but I understand why they didn't tell us. They were afraid. Anyway, we didn't make anything. We bought it for a flip, and we worked on it for 6 months, and we did not even get paid a penny for 6 months of work. So it was disappointing. But the thing I want to capitalize on is that we did not find mercy with the county. And we have never found mercy when there's been an enforcement issue. Maybe a little bit at first, and it grows as time goes by. So telling people an enforcement officer is going to decide how much time you have, I think is a little bit crazy. If you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about. My son Austin also had a project, and he called the planning and the building department 2 times. He was so afraid about what happened to us. And they're both like, no, everything is good to go, everything's good to go. He's lived in the Bay Area since he was married, and they have a bunch of kids, and this was going to be his first home. And so, anyway, he bought it thinking someday he would get to it. Sorry, that's the rest of mine. He bought it thinking he'd get a chance to invest in something, maybe use it for a vacation rental and come up later and, you know, maybe sell it or whatever. Anyway, when he went in, he got everything done, when he put his application, they said, oh, we see that the bottom of your duplex was not permitted, it was storage. And he's like, okay, what do I have to do? He ended up having to gut both buildings, the top and the bottom. And he was so broke, he used his whole retirement, he lost all of his credit, he maxed every credit card. Every time I talk to him, he's shaking. You would not even believe what he's put through. Somebody at building said, you could probably ask the building director if he'll let you open one of them, you know, since that one's done and everything. So he went begging for grace, not even be able to pay his bills. And he was met with, no, I don't think so. So anyway, I would just say that if it hadn't been for God's faithfulness in our life, we would not have made it through our 2 projects. And for those who are trying to survive this in this little community of love, they may not have much, but they have a place to live, to call their own. And I say, leave people alone. And you don't know what it's like to have county come down on you until you've been there. We don't need more rules and fines and fees than we already have. If we can't enforce the code, maybe we should get rid of the code. And personally, I would rather go to the court and deal before a judge with a definite rule than ever go before county enforcement again. So if that gives you a little idea where we are, thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say, for the sake of everybody that I spoke to, 3 minutes is not enough time for residents to actually voice their opinion. And before I got cut off, I was talking about, as a gold miner, if we have an excavator, a backhoe, or a dump truck break, we diagnose the problem and we fix it. As I mentioned, you guys have code enforcement and code compliance issues already on the books. Fix what we have. That's what we paid for. I would hope that you folks here today see what's going on here. When you have people that, like I mentioned earlier, that I battle on Facebook because we have political differences about Trump and Biden, but here we're actually high-fiving each other and we're in the same camp because everybody opposes us, and it's not option 2 and 4 kicking it down the road to the next board of supervisors. It's option 3. Get rid of this thing, guys and girls. It's horrendous. I'm not sure what it's going to take to convince you guys of that. I don't even know why we're here and we've gotten this far, but let me just state this. I was a white-collar crime investigator for 20 years, and I was a professional interrogator that investigated people on government levels, big cities, states, and things that did really bad things, corruption kind of things. And there was almost always, in every one of my more than 2,000 cases, 2 things that drove people. Excuse me, it was either money or it was power when we're talking about government officials. Almost every single case that it was about either they were seeking money or they were seeking power. And I don't know, and I'm not accusing any of you guys of seeking money or power, but something doesn't pass the smell test of why you're trying to push this on a horrendous law firm that is under all kinds of investigations and lawsuits. When we already have something on the books, it just defies logic. And I'm going to leave you with this one little thing, and it's just a thought that I had, and it's called irony. Wouldn't it be ironic if every single person that's going to hear this video or this audio that I post, every person that is a registered voter in the county of Mariposa, and every person here today, filed an anonymous complaint against every single property by every single one of you that vote to pass this. Thank you.
Yeah, and you turned it off. There you go.
Okay, I spoke before, but what I wanted to say to you right now is that first of all, I wanted to say I have lived in Mariposa County all my life. My great-grandchildren are 6th generation Mariposa. So I do love the county, but one thing I am really disappointed in every single one of you. Not one of you even considered option 3, and that disappoints me. Thank you.
Now you're on.
Yeah, I don't know you guys. I'd like everybody to raise their hand that voted to start this mess. Would you do that for me? Because I don't know you guys. I know one person didn't, but I don't know who that is. So if you voted to start this, raise your hand.
This is your turn to speak with us.
Well, I'm trying to figure out who's who.
Everybody but the blue shirt at the end.
From here on.
Yes.
And this is the only one that did it.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you. The rest of you four save the county some money and resign. Because you're not going to work
It's on now?
It is on.
Okay, this is as much of an address to the Board of Supervisors as to the public who are listening in behind me outside in the room. You all need to realize that what's on the code right now is extremely draconian, as the only difference is that it's hard to enforce. So I am going to propose to remove the existing code, which also has a $100 a day per violation on the books. It's just that it hasn't come to fruition because they have to take you to court and it's too difficult and expensive. That's why they're making it easy with the new code. I recommend that all codes are pulled and start from the ground up with public input, which satisfies two needs. One is obviously to not have a free-for-all in our county that degrades our properties and does enforce basic standards of health and safety, but two, protects the rights of all citizens for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that there are two sides to this coin. There is the side where you can't have complete anarchy, but you also can't have complete tyranny. There is a balance between having a community that's tenable, that you can live in, and know that your rights are protected, both from wrongdoers and from government overreach. There is a balance. And that balance needs to be found. The earlier code is no good. The current proposal is no good. And I think a wide range of public input, suggestions to then distill down to something that creates a balance between proper code enforcement and rights of citizens needs to be achieved. Thank you.
All right. There was one question that I didn't get a chance to ask, and it's, why have you guys retained counsel already unless you're getting ready for a fight, which means that you've aligned yourself against us, and you're supposed to be representing us. You are the representative of the people.
Yeah.
What's up?
Woo!
Anyone else like to speak?
You're on. You're on.
Turn it.
My name is Dale Meishammer, and I moved into this county about 12 years ago. And I inherited any violations on my property that I'm not aware of. And your code violation people decide that they want to come down on me for whatever reason, like maybe some anonymous complaint, which I don't find very valid. Like somebody has a complaint on their property, I think they ought to be able to at least sign their name to the complaint. On top of that, I find that the idea of a citation being issued on a day and a fine start on the same day just leaves no place for anyone any wiggle room to take care of the codes, to actually get repairs. I moved into this county. I had a fine home. It still is a fine home. Several years ago, I decided that it needed to be painted, it needed to have a roof, and various other things on the property. It took me almost a year to find a contractor that could fill my needs. If something was brought about to me and forced me into a code violation situation where I'm paying a fine of $100 a day, I would have lost my property a long time ago. This is not fair. This is not what you people are here for. You're here to protect us, not to create a code and enforce it by developed by a law firm that's under your contract. This stinks of Silver and Wright. It stinks of everything on the internet of Silver and Wright. I really think you really need to start up with number 3, which is now off the board. I think you need to start over. And you need a lot of public input, because everything I hear is violation of state and federal law from your side of the house. And I don't really think you people are aware of that. I think you're flying blind under the influence of a law firm that is going to cost you nothing but hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits. Thank you very much.
All right, are there folks on the line that have not had a chance to speak? Anyone on the line that wants to address this item number 1 from the 2 o'clock agenda?
Yes.
My
name is Kate Bowen. I've been in Mariposa County since about 1980. I'm just disappointed with that we even have to come to this point. I'm disappointed with the codes we have. We elect you to be there for us, and we would like to see you, number 3, drop everything. You know, right now, the fines that nobody should have the right, when you pay that much for your home, nobody should have the right to come to your home and tell you, you know, if it's not an endangerment, you guys shouldn't have that right to tell us what we can or cannot have in front of our homes. I understand you may not want to see an eyesore, but keep in mind, one man's treasure is another man's trash. So, for you to come and judge our homes is wrong. That's not why we elected you into office. So I would ask you that you please consider 3. I thank you for trying to consider 2, but I would like to see you consider 3.
Thank you. Any other comments from on the telephone line?
Yes, hi.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Chris Castro. Thank you for visiting this issue today. Public policy we're trying to do with good general welfare. Many of the people today are fearful of some things that are in the ordinance last time. And I want to say that I've been there an eyesore and for the last 5 years, and I is being robbed of my ability to have peace and contentment in our rural county. And it's one of the reasons where a lot of people move to the foothills, because they can have a beautiful place to live, small town atmosphere, and usually generally pretty great neighbors. But I think that we need to come together, community meeting. We can reach some common ground after we have enough information so the basic understanding what the codes are now, what they need, and what the existing conditions are, and the ramifications of not applying the codes and what would it look like. And I want to go back and see that there's so much disrespect with council staff. I have always had good relationships with the staff. They've been
very helpful, and which is what we really want to see in a small town. So I am looking forward to looking at a new, fresh eyes with better concepts. And I know that I hope that we can get together and get a resolution, because there's a lot of common ground. Absolutely can understand everyone's viewpoint. So thank you for looking to give the another thought. Appreciate it. Thank you for understanding.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else on?
Hi. Yes, this is Beverly Ann Laura.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to say I support options 2 and 4. I don't support option 3 because I do think we need greater enforcement ability for at least some of the codes in Mariposa, and we need to have, with option 3, it would drop the issue with no guarantee of it being picked up again. Option 3 does not say it will be picked up by the next board. It says it will drop it. Now, the option is there to pick it up, but that could be just ignored. Unfortunately, people are going to cut corners, whether intentionally or through lack of knowledge. And so without enforcement of some sort, we run the risk of substandard buildings, which are a safety risk for the people living there, whether the owners or renters, and for neighbors, especially in the case of electrical work, which could cause fires. However, it does seem that a lot more discussion and modification is needed to the proposed code as well as the existing code. And in particular, we need to consider how to ensure that people aren't going to lose their homes while ensuring people's safety. And someone else suggested, I think we should look at involving the community more directly in the discussion, homeowners as well as business owners, contractors and such. And perhaps set up some kind of a community committee to look at the existing code, at the new recommendations, and try to hash out something that works across the board for everybody. We can't go without any kind of enforcement. Truthfully, you can't trust people. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Some people are not going to follow the code. There's nothing that's going to force them to do it. But I do agree some code, perhaps isn't necessary. Anyway, I think 2 and 4 is what I would like to see us do, and have a lot more discussion on trying to figure out how to make this work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other online input? All right. I will close public input at this point. This is a discussion and direction item. Bring it back to the board for any discussion and or direction. Supervisor Menetrek.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate the last caller's comments there. Option 3 just completely drops this project and really denies the voices of the folks that have an issue, be it with a neighbor or, well, I guess it would be a neighbor. The complaints that we get, that they get, that at this point just a letter is sent, it's not helping the folks that are on the other end of this conversation we're having today, and they're not here. The reason that I chose option 2, and on the board it says hit pause. In our agenda packet, it says much more than hit pause. It says if the Board of Supervisors is still interested in amending the code compliance procedures in some way to increase the effectiveness and the efficiency of code compliance efforts in the county, then the board could direct staff to pursue a facilitated process for increasing communications and public interaction and input regarding this issue. That's what I'm voting for, to have these voices heard, your voices heard, your input tied in with the process of creating something that we can all agree upon. We need to have some enforcement. We need for it not to be overbearing and as upsetting as it is now. So it's much more than just hitting pause and pushing it to the next board. As I just read, this is the definition of what I am putting my voice behind in option number 2, and I still stand with option number 4 and the dope growers. And it's not just the dope, it's the grading, it's the grading issues on adjacent properties, it's the threat of forest fire from these generators that they put way down the hill so nobody will hear it, and the lines are running. There's a lot going on, and unfortunately we don't have the pictures to show you all that we see of the damage that's going on in our county from these folks. They deserve all the punishment they can get, and if they don't like it, they can go to Calaveras, they can go to Madera, they can go wherever else. But they're damaging our county and they're having a big effect on their neighbors. So I just wanted to express those are the reasons that I am in favor of number 2 and number 4. It's not just pushing it off to the next board. It's getting some interaction from the public. Let's get comfortable with this thing so everybody knows what's going on. You don't feel like you're being run over or the county's after your property. That is, and it's certainly not a revenue incentive deal either. But I absolutely agree. You all need to feel comfortable with what's going on. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Smallcombe.
Thank you, Chair. So what I would like to talk about is the people that are not in this room. The people that I've spoken with, the people that I'm sure at least some of my colleagues on the board have spoken with. And I think about my constituents, in this case in Mid-Pines, and I'll start with that. Ultimately, we have to have an effective enforcement mechanism. We have the old Muir Lodge in Mid-Pines, and I talked about this at the last meeting, but for those of you who may not have heard, it's also in the FAQ on my website. But I live in constant fear that somebody is going to go in that old motel that has been stripped, torn apart. There's junk everywhere. We know that people are going there on a regular basis. And I live in fear that somebody's going to start a fire there. And that embankment is right behind the old Muir Lodge. And it will go up and it will take out a good portion of Mid-Pines. And those folks have suffered enough with the Telegraph, the Detweiler, the Ferguson, the Bryceburg. They don't need another fire in their backyard. So, and then I think about other people that I've spoken with, and a lot of them are victims. It's almost like a domestic abuse situation. There are renters who live in substandard housing, and the landlord doesn't really want to take responsibility for the exposed wiring or the lack of heat or the steps that are in bad repair and the older lady is not entirely ambulatory to begin with and is worried about it. And the landlord says, well, I'll get to it just next week or next month or the month after that. Or just live with it or leave it. I don't care what you do. Or parents or grandparents with young children. We're living in a facility that has improper wiring or plumbing or trash or junk in the yard, and they're worried about letting their kids go out and play in that mess. And they have no recourse, right? We don't have a lot of extra housing here in Mariposa. It's not like they can say, you don't fix my hot water heater, I'm out of here. I've got another place just down the road. That's not an option often here. And so these folks are stuck in a situation where they are at risk because we cannot exercise any control over what's happening. We don't have an ability to influence the behavior of that landlord to make the place safe for those people to live in the home. And Supervisor Menetre talked about marijuana. How many sheriff's deputies have been in live fire situations? on those marijuana grows. We know it happens. The sheriff has talked about that in this code. And as a supervisor, I am concerned about the safety of the older lady in that rental property, the parents, the grandkids, the grandparents, the kids that are in that substandard housing. I have to worry about that because they are part of our community just as much as you folks are. I also have to worry about our employees, our public safety folks, our compliance technicians, our building inspectors, going into these places, and our firefighters. They go into these places and they have no idea what kind of chemicals are in that junkyard, and they don't know whether those chemicals might blow up in their face when they go on fire. And we know that on some of those marijuana grows, they do catch on fire. We had at least 3 fires in the last year where those facilities caught on fire. We were fortunate. There were firefighter personnel and there was equipment here when those fires broke out. So the fires were contained quickly. What happens when we've got another statewide fire season like we had this year with 4 million acres burned and the personnel and the equipment aren't here? And so that's something else that we all have to think about. We have to worry about the potential for those places catching on fire and burning down our communities. And then there's the situations where folks come up here, they're gonna live out the rest of their lives, they buy a nice home, what they think is a nice home, and then they find out when they go to re-roof it or redo a wall or something that is covered by the building code, they find out that this home, and somebody talked about that they had come in and acquired a home that didn't have permitting on it. We don't want that to happen to anybody else. We want old folks to come in here to Mariposa County to buy a property, to buy a home, and have a reasonable assurance that they're buying what they think they're buying, that they're getting a home that is safe for them, for their family, for their relatives. And we have no mechanism to do that right now. Unless we take them to court on a criminal basis or on a civil basis. And in both those cases, unless we prevail in the courts, you folks, us, we all end up paying the tab on that. So it's coming out of taxpayer dollars. And we have to worry about what our finances are too. What are we spending our money on? So who speaks for these folks? We have to keep those folks in our minds because they are part of our constituency just as you are. And county staff wants to work with folks who want to work with us. We know that because we know that 55%, over half of the cases that have been identified, are worked out between our staff and the property owners. It's that 45% that refuse to take responsibility. They're the kid, remember, at school that said, I won't play your game unless you play by my rules, right? Well, we all have to play by the same rules. Or we expose other folks to the consequences of that. The new house owner, the new property owner. So why are we doing this? I've already talked about the public safety aspect of it. It is not for revenue. And somebody's asked, I know they've talked about it on Facebook, but it is spelled out in the proposed code 1.40.050I and 1.42.200. Fines and fees collected would go into a code compliance account. So, and we are not doing this for revenue. I'm sure that everybody on this board would be perfectly happy if we never got a nickel out of this. If Lynn and Colleen, we would be perfectly happy if we never got a nickel out of it. It is not for revenue. Well,
What are you going to do with the money?
The fines and fees will go into a code compliance account, and the uses are spelled out in the proposed code. So if you'd like to read those sections of the proposed code, then you can assure yourself that what I'm saying is at least what we had proposed. It's also not for property. We don't want to acquire anybody's home. That's the last thing we want to do. We do not want to make anybody else homeless. We're trying to address the homeless situation in our community right now. We're doing an update on our strategic homelessness plan that should be available next month. We are working very hard to reduce the number of homeless folks in our community. But again, we have to think about where are people living and what can we do to help them. And so I would invite everybody in this room to be part of the conversation under option 2, to not only talk about what do we have now, as somebody mentioned, and what's wrong with what we have now in terms of working with people, but also to be part of the conversation about how we as the Mariposa community work together for the benefit of all of our residents. We know that there are a lot of folks who are facing difficult circumstances, but we need to have that conversation so we can talk about the resources that are available. And where there are not resources, our staff is committed to find those resources. So whether we're talking about the Organization for Assisted Living, or we're talking about the Area 12 Agency on Aging, or we're talking about Habitat for Humanity, a lot of organizations are already interested in working with us to help those people. And our own staff are also looking for grants. We've applied, again, for grants to be able to help people with their repairs to the tune of $300,000. That's not a lot, but it's a start. And if we can prove that we have the capacity to do that work for our citizens, then we have reason to believe that we will be successful in pursuing more money. So again, I ask that you be, I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that many of you have commented on my, on the Mariposa chat, and I've tried to incorporate your comments into the FAQ on my website, and I'll continue to try to update that. So I appreciate that conversation, but again, I need you guys to think about the people whose voices you're not hearing in this room today, the people that we talk to who are afraid to come forward because of their fears of retaliation from their neighbors.
Bullshit. Bullshit. All right.
Yeah, well, you don't talk to them. I do.
Thank you. So, a couple of clarifications. When we talk about item number 2 and 3, as far as options, item number 2, going with item number 2 doesn't commit the board or the public to a single sentence out of the current proposal. It commits to a process of public interaction and trying to come up with a unified process, as it was said up here a number of times, to fill this terrible void that we have right now. When someone says they'd rather go to court, that's because, unfortunately, they don't know this process. Going to court is the absolute worst thing for everyone, because that means that the judge, as another person said, the judge has taken over, hires whatever firm he wants to deal with the issue. And the concept of fining from day one is never, ever an intention. And in fact, our code records are filled with 30-day notice, 30-day notice, 30-day notice, and it goes on from there. Notice no one has come in here and said, I had a problem. They've come in and said, I had a problem. No one ever said they got fined. No one ever, and so it's that my only point here is that item 3 says, go do whatever you want to do. And very few people will like that over time, because sooner or later the junkyard is beside you. Sooner or later, the person that starts up their business with 37 trucks on their 5-acre parcel is beside you. But that, the county can never eliminate the codes, and that's dereliction of duty. So,
That's not what it says.
item number 2, when I'm speaking now, you had your chance, thank you. Item number 2 says we want to work together for a process that we can all believe in. So I'm just clarifying that. The last thing is I cannot support item number 4, dealing with the marijuana ordinances strongly enough. Right now, we have a horrendous situation where you will go in, we'll get a complaint, or we'll do a helicopter, we'll see 5,000 plants. Sheriff's office will go in, eradicate 5,000 plants. Oh, there's also 6 unpermitted buildings, wires strung all over. As Miles said, there's generators covered with hay bales, or there's a tap on the PG&E line. This is over and over and over, and the hazardous waste. We clean it up, we go away, and come back in 10 weeks, and there's 5,000 more plants. So there has to be an ability to deal with some of this stuff. When I found out the fire risk associated with, and the hazardous waste risk associated with so many of these grows, it absolutely must get dealt with. So I will support going with item 2, which again doesn't commit the future board to a single line out of the current proposal that commits to a process that frankly we all agree we should have done this time. And item 4 to deal with as expeditiously as possible the structure for finding of commercial grows, which we have had tremendous support in outlawing here in Mariposa County. I did, and she doesn't. Supervisor Jones.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And again, thank you everybody for attending. You know, this input I think helps everybody. And I think the more information that is given out, and the more understanding there is with what is required by the county and what what we can do and cannot do. I see our building officials sitting back there, and they reminded me that when I was going over the building codes. The building codes are adopted by California. He has basically no options on most of the building codes. They are adopted by the state of California. We as a county have to enforce those codes. I mean, he can't just say if there's illegal wiring, I'm just going to walk away and not do anything. The state of California come down hard on us. Number 2, I think everybody working together, and this is pertaining to number 2, can come up with a really good solution, because a lot of that I think is maybe needs to be tweaked, changed, whatever it is. The new board, I won't be here, so if somebody wants to recall me, go right ahead and recall me, impeach me, whatever you want to do. So I think that answers one question. Number 3, is there people that give us the finger? And I'm not talking about this finger either. Yes, there's a whole bunch of people that do when they are cited for a major violation, whether it be pot growing or whatever. They just say, the red tag's on the building, forget it. And really there's not a lot we can do about it except take them to court and then get blamed by the media on what happens to the Cox case. Number 4, somebody mentioned you look at money and power. Now, anybody that has looked at the salary of this job needs to go and look at it, and the cost of doing it, it sure ain't the money and it sure ain't the power. Because neither one of them are there. Number 5, and again, why I support option 4 is a good example of that is in my district. There was a pot grow fertilizer. They use a lot of fertilizer. It got in the creeks, ran down, got into the drinking pond for the cattle, poisoned a bunch of cattle. Guy lost the cattle. But what's he going to do about it? Nothing. The cost of taking people to court, that comes out of each one of you's taxpayer money. That takes out of your road money, fire money, everything else. And that is something, and so that's the last resort. And I know this board member, I can't speak about the rest of it, want to see happen. The other thing is this, with item 4, is there was a gentleman in the hardware store the other day that in the Greeley Hill hardware store that had gotten busted. He was talking to me, and I was a little surprised to see him there. And he said, "I'm getting ready to plant again." I said, "Why in the world are you telling me?" I said, "I'm the last person you ought to be telling." So I said, "Now I'm required by law to report it to the sheriff's department, and I am required by law." He said, "This is the cost of doing business. Eradicate me once and I'll come back and I'll just plant again the same season." Now, do we want that in Mariposa County? I don't think any of us want that in Mariposa County. And the big drug cartels, this is peanuts to them, believe me. So I think item 4 should be brought forward, and the stuff that goes along with 4. If a person really takes the time to look into it, it is horrendous. The wiring, I think that was already mentioned. I'm not going to go into all that stuff, but in the violence that goes along with it. Because if somebody is growing a bunch of pot, I know for sure they have a bunch of cash out there. And that's an easy way to get cash, and you usually get it with a gun. So let's eliminate that part. And I guess I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay, so in conclusion here, is the board comfortable, at least a degree of consensus, giving the planning department direction to come up with a few alternative processes, come back to the board in the next calendar year with a process that the board can agree on and move forward with, and at the same time deal as expeditiously as possible with alternative number 4 and the commercial marijuana, illegal commercial marijuana grow concerns. Okay.
So for clarification, you're saying to bifurcate those and move forward on option 4, not together with moving forward on option 2. They're 2 different processes.
Move together? I mean, it might take 2 years to do the other.
Well, Chair, I'm
ahead.
simply going by what our planning director said. She would prefer to do them simultaneously.
I think the concern is that there's a need for public input on any process that involves amending codes relative to compliance procedures. And we could
separate those two, but there should still be some process to involve the public on those amended procedures if we're going to separate them.
You advise us on this. Do you want to do them separately or together?
I do think that it will take a significant time to do to go through a public process and involve, to do a credible process to amend the Title I amendments, to amend, or even to amend what we have today. If we start from zero and we just look at what we have today and what kind of amendments, it's going to take significant time. The reason I suggested option 4 is that I think, as I said before, there is a significant problem, probably the biggest problem relative to off-site potential health hazards relative to, for nothing else, wildland fire risks, fire hazard risks and safety. And I'm perfectly fine with moving that forward ahead of the others.
I think that is the best response to the terrible problem that exists with the marijuana growth commercial. All right, that will conclude that item. So to recap, we will go on to the next 4 ordinances that the board has indicated. Again, they have 2 options on. You can approve the second reading or you can deny or reject the second reading. The board has stated they're going to reject all 4 of them. So you're welcome to, we'll have the public comment process on each one, and you're welcome to go through it all again. If your objective was to support it being denied, the board has said that's what they're going to do. So you can call your own shot. So does the board need a break or are we good to go? All right. We'll move on to item number 2 in the afternoon agenda, which is to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding Chapter 1.40 Administrative Citations and Chapter 1.42 Abatement of Nuisances in Title I of the County Code. This, as it says, is the second reading. If no changes are permitted, is there any board discussion on this, Supervisor Long?
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to clarify for the public that we cannot leave these ordinances just hanging out. We have the second reading, you either approve it or disapprove it. And so we have to move it, so the supervisor has to move it in second so that then we can vote on it. Just because we move it second doesn't mean we agree with it. We have to go through that procedure so that we can vote against it. So then that ordinance is done. Just wanted to clarify that. The county council can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct. I think that's what we said. So at this point, I will open for any public comment on this, and I think we will necessarily keep it at 3 minutes again. Is there any public comment on this item number 2? Okay then. Is there public comment on the phone for item number 2? Any call-in comment? No. Yes. Please state your name, and if you want to give a public comment, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Or not. Okay. I'm going to close public comment then, bring it back to the board for any discussion and action. Supervisor Long.
I will move the item as presented.
No.
Yeah. Then we have to vote.
Okay, you're right. Very good. You move the item. And Supervisor Jones.
And I'll second it.
Okay, if there's no further discussion,
You got that?
stay with me here. Oh. Huh?
You need to read it. Yeah, I don't want to vote no.
Yeah. Renee, do we need to read?
Let's work out the work.
All right, then I want you to hold on the second.
Okay,
Withdraw the second.
I'll withdraw the second.
We're all anxious to act here. Board Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, a motion has been made to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding Chapter 1.40, Administrative Citations, and Chapter 1.42, Abatement of Nuisances in Title I of County Code, and that is an ordinance that is formally titled an ordinance adding Chapter 1.40, Administrative Citations, and Chapter 1.42, Abatement of Nuisances in Title I of County Code. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further comment, I will call for the vote. Roll call for the vote. Roll call. Thank you. Supervisor Jones.
Nay.
Supervisor Small.
Nay.
Supervisor Long.
Nay.
Supervisor Menetre.
No.
And Supervisor Can is no. Motion fails. You know, wouldn't these also fail if no one moved them? Okay.
They would remain inhibited.
Yeah.
Okay.
They never go away.
Thank you. All process here. Okay, that motion fails. And that item, the second reading fails, is rejected. We'll move on to item number 3. Item number 3 is to waive second reading and adopt an ordinance adding section 3.36.220 and 3.36.230 to chapter 3.36 of Mariposa County Code. Any board discussion? Is there any public input in the room? Is there any public input on the line, on the telephone call-in line?
No.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Then I will close public input and bring it back to the board for action. Supervisor Smallcombe.
I move that we waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding sections 3.36 and 3.36230 to chapter 3.36
of Mariposa
County Code.
County Clerk, Board Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, a motion has been made to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding sections 3.36.220 and 3.36.230 to Chapter 3.36 of Mariposa County Code, and that is an ordinance that is formally titled an ordinance adding sections 3.36.220 and 3.36.230 to Chapter 3.36 of Mariposa County Code. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Jones.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will call for the roll call vote. Supervisor Menetre.
No.
Supervisor Long.
Nay.
Supervisor Smallcombe.
No.
And Supervisor Jones.
Nay.
Supervisor Can is no. Motion fails. Go to item 4, which is to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance amending chapter 8.56 of Mariposa County Code, which regulates medical marijuana cultivation to ensure consistency with chapters 1.40 and 1.42 of Mariposa County Code. Any discussion? Supervisor Menetre.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah, do we need to pass this one to facilitate option 4?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open for public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Public comment online?
I'm mute.
No, you're not mute, but that's okay.
I can hear you.
I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for action. Supervisor Long.
I'll move the item as presented.
Thank you. Supervisor Menon. No. Thank you. Madam Board Clerk.
Thank you. At this time, a motion has been made to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 8.56 of Mariposa County Code, which regulates medical marijuana cultivation to ensure consistency with chapters 1.40 and 1.42 of the Mariposa County Code. And that is an ordinance that is formally titled an ordinance amending chapter 8.56 of Mariposa County Code, which regulates medical marijuana cultivation to ensure consistency with chapters 1.40 and 1.42 of the Mariposa County Code. Thank you.
Look for a second. Supervisor Menatre?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Supervisor Menatre?
No.
Supervisor Long? Nay. Supervisor Smallcombe?
Nay.
And Supervisor Jones?
Nay.
Supervisor Can is no. Motion fails. Item number 5, to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding sections 17.144.110 and 17.114.0.120 to chapter 17.144 Mariposa County Code. Is there any board discussion before I do public comment? Is there any public comment in the room? Is there any public comment online? Hearing none, I think he gave up. I will bring it back to the board for discussion or action. Who's next? Supervisor Jones.
I'll move the item as presented.
Thank you. Madam Board Clerk.
Thank you. At this time, a motion has been made to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding section 17.144.1.
Yeah, there's an extra.
It's 140. It's just 140.
Okay, thank you. And 144.120, according to the ordinance, to chapter 17.144 of Mariposa County Code. And that is an ordinance that is formally titled an ordinance adding section 17.144.110 and 17.144.120 to chapter 17.144 of Mariposa County Code. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I need a second. Supervisor Menatre.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Just to be clear, that typo is in the agenda item. The actual ordinance was written up. It was correct. We went through that last time. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will call for the roll call vote. Supervisor Jones.
Yay.
Supervisor Smallcombe.
Nay.
Supervisor Long.
Nay.
Supervisor Menatre.
Oh.
And Supervisor Can is no. Motion fails. That concludes today's actions. Thank you all for coming and your input. Let's hope we can get back to where everybody's dealing